Zane, good job hiding from the public even though your morpher's a cell phone. Hey everyone, and welcome to another Ranger Rant. I'm Archer9234. Today I'll be discussing episode 31 from Power Rangers in Space, titled Rangers Gone Psycho. Now for In Space, the Psycho Ranger arc is very unique. For the most part, In Space usually didn't want to actually adapt any story elements from Mega Rangers at all. For the most part, if you watch all the Mega Ranger episodes and if you watch In Space, hardly any of these story elements are ever used from Mega Rangers in Space except for the obvious uses of the monster footage. But for the Psycho Ranger Saga arc, they pretty much adapted the entire arc that was in Mega Rangers. Now for in this case, this is not really a bad idea because the Psycho Ranger arc in Mega Rangers was a really good story, and so why not adapt it in Power Rangers? This is one of the perfect examples of where Power Rangers should adapt the story from Super Sentai because it's a really good story. Why not? It has villains, it has really good story elements that involve around the entire cast members, and it's always cool to see the Rangers basically fight evil versions of themselves. Now, primarily, this episode is actually adapting episode 38 from Mega Rangers, but the beginning teaser with the owl monster is actually adapting footage from episode 15 of Mega Rangers. A lot of times in Space does this with the episodes. Whenever they have it like an episode that they're never going to adapt or they just can't adapt, they'll use it as either a teaser trail in the beginning. For example, in this episode, the entire owl monster fight with the Megazord, similar to how they adapted episode 4 from Mega Rangers that was used later on in the episode where Adam returns in Space as a guest appearance. Now the episode starts where Andros is looking at his lock, and of course, this is a reminder for everyone in the previous episode where, Carone had finally turned good. Andros had finally found out that Carone and Astronomer are his sister, and unfortunately, Carone had to be returned. Earth would have been destroyed by an asteroid, and of course, Andros is still sad and depressed of, he lost his sister, he just found out. Now, this story element is actually reused again in Power Rangers RPM. The whole Dylan and Tenaya 7 story elements are nearly identical. They follow the same path. Now, a lot of people blame this on Judd Ling because if you remember back in RPM, Eddie Gazillion had done a little bit of stupid things that caused him to get fired from RPM, and Judd Ling had taken over. But the whole copying of Carone and Andros' story in RPM is really not Judd Ling's fault. Eddie Gazillion had set up the story, and it was pretty much copied this by accident. So of course Ashley walks into the bridge, and of course she sees Andros is totally upset and depressed. So she tries to basically cheer up Andros, and basically we also get reminded that of course Ashley and Andros' relationship in this scene, especially that she actually kind of hugs him and tries to comfort him, and basically says, well, we should go down to Earth and take a relaxing break, because if you remember, they've dealt with the asteroid and so many monsters in the past episodes. So we finally head back to Earth, and we finally return to the rare uses of the surf spot. I particularly never understood why they really kept the surf spot, which is a reuse of Ernie's juice bar. I never understood why they kept it because we frankly, at this point in time in Power Rangers, we had stopped going there. So they really didn't need to use this place anymore. They could have just simply filmed this at an ordinary, outside location. So when the Rangers finally get their very rare moment of, relaxating from all the monster attacks, Andros and everyone actually hear their communicators go off. But fortunately enough, it wasn't the actual communicator, and they basically find out that this new electronic device called the Copernicus 2000 is actually triggering their communicator sound. Now, for the people who haven't grown up in the 90s, the Copernicus 2000 is a reference of a little fad that happened in the mid-90s where this new electronic diary craze had happened, where people were buying these diaries that can calculate, save your notes, do this, and help you in school. That was roughly where the Copernicus 2000 was based off of. While Carlos is at the juice bar, they basically find out that there was a monster attacking an area of the city. So Carlos and the other Rangers were about to head out of the surf spot when all of a sudden we see that the Power Rangers come on screen out of nowhere. Now this scene is very reminiscent to an episode that happened in MMPR, the episode where the Rangers were stuck in detention with Bulk and Skull, and they actually saw the evil Rangers on the TV screen. So of course the news reporters don't know that those are actually evil Rangers until it's too late, and we actually see the evil Rangers actually attack these civilian news reporters and the people in the area, which is quite rare because a lot of times we don't usually see Rangers directly attack civilians because again, they're not monsters and they're regular people, so it's kind of a censoring issue that I'm surprised they had got away with. But if you look closely during that scene where the Rangers are attacking the civilians, they're actually using the Astro Blaster toy as the props for the guns. Now, of course, fans of the show know that Power Rangers have done the Evil Rangers multiple times. We've seen it in MMPR Season 1. But for whatever reason, the villains always like changing one detail on their suits. In MMPR, it was their collars. The second time they did the Evil Rangers, it was their belts, gloves, and boots. Now in Space, it's their icon colors on their chest that give them away. Now, eventually, the real Power Rangers finally arrive on the scene, and they're totally confused what's going on. These can't be real Rangers at all. Now, following with the tradition of Evil Rangers, the Evil Rangers also have different weapons. For Andros has the Spiral Saber, the Evil Red Ranger has a sword. For TJ, he has the Astro Axe. Now, the evil version is a double-sided axe. Carlos has his staff. Now, for the evil version, it's sort of like a trident staff. The only similar weapon between the good and evil Ranger versions is the Star Slinger, and for Pink, it's changed from a satellite stunner to a bow. The evil Rangers are much more stronger than the Power Rangers, of course, and they easily stop them, and the evil Rangers finally reveal their true forms. Now, people may notice that on the Psycho Ranger suits, there's actually an N on their belt buckle. The reason why there's an N on their belt buckle, instead of like saying there's a P for Psycho, the N stands for Niji Rangers. That's what they're actually called in Mega Rangers. Now, after the Psycho Rangers finally reveal to the Rangers who they really are and they're seeing their evil appearance, the Rangers just simply bum rush the Psycho Rangers. I thought that was really stupid of Andros and everyone because the Psycho Rangers easily defeated them in their Evil Ranger version. Then all of a sudden, Andros and everyone simply go attack them again. Well, nothing changed. They're stronger than you, so why did you just simply go right attack them? The Rangers should have simply retreated at that point. So unfortunately, since the Psycho Rangers are too strong for the Space Rangers, eventually we see that the Psycho Rangers have this ability, grab their heads, and we find out that the Psycho Rangers can actually read their minds. So now the Space Rangers are at a disadvantage. They know who they are, they know how they think, they know how they fight, and they know how they can postulate strategies. They know the weaknesses of all the Megazords, and it gives the Space Rangers even a more disadvantage of the Psycho Rangers without them just worrying about them just being stronger and having other special abilities. Just at the last minute, while the Psycho Rangers are sucking all the memories and energies out of the Space Rangers, Zane comes in, just gets the Psycho Rangers off the Rangers, and forcibly makes them retreat. Now, people are probably wondering, how come Zane didn't come in there any sooner? Remember in the beginning of In Space where Zane had a time limit or a power limit on his suit and it was simply fixed? In Mega Rangers, this is pretty much identical. What happens in Mega Rangers, Mega Silver's suit is limited to 2 minutes. This was still going on in this episode. That's the reason why Zane comes at the last minute, because again, Mega Silver still has a time limit. So of course all the Rangers regroup and head back to the Astro Mega Ship where they try to figure out what to do with the Psycho Rangers. Now, thanks to reading their minds and understanding how the electronics work, the Psycho Rangers begin their hunt around the city. Now, this does actually happen inside Mega Rangers 2. The Psycho Rangers are scanning around the city in order to locate the specific sound that's coming from their morphers and communicators that are sent out. Now, this is kind of confusing if you think about it, is that how can the Psycho Rangers spot this specific sound effect? I personally think what they did was in Mega Rangers and in Space, they tried to make it more simplistic so kids wouldn't get confused of how the Psycho Rangers are finding them. But I think the Psycho Rangers are simply scanning for a signal, a specific signal that's being transmitted from their morphers. Thanks to the popularity of the Copernicus 2000, and a lot of people have that device around the city and are simply, triggering that sound effect. So of course all the Psycho Rangers are basically running around the city and trying to locate the real Rangers. Now, fortunately enough, the Psycho Rangers are not really that evil, because if I was them, I would have killed the old people and that guy. Because frankly, if I was tricked by a sound effect from a stupid electronic device and it wasn't the Rangers, I would have been pissed off. Now, of course, the Rangers eventually hear that, a whole bunch of people around the city are being attacked randomly by the Psycho Rangers, and they really just don't know what's going on. TJ thinks, well, as a precaution, I should call Zane, that's still on Earth, trying to locate the Psycho Rangers. Now, here comes the stupid moment in the episode. Zane, of course, is being contacted by TJ on the Astro Mega Ship. Now, of course, Zane actually goes to hide some cover in order to talk to TJ. Now, normally in Power Rangers, this would make perfect sense because, again, you don't want to see the Power Rangers talking to their watches or their morphers because they're odd and very confusing gadgets that people might, start asking questions. But for Zane, this doesn't make any sense. Think about it. Zane's morpher is a cell phone. So Zane could have simply just been talking on his cell phone in broad daylight. Since TJ actually contacted Zane, this gave Zane's position away from the Psycho Rangers, and they eventually ambushed Zane and captured him. Now, I also thought this was stupid of TJ because TJ and the other Rangers should have thought of this, because if the Psycho Rangers are randomly attacking people, they have their reasons why they're doing that, and they should have simply thought, we shouldn't contact the Rangers through our communicators and simply should go there in person to get them back out. But when Carlos finally remembers the Copernicus 2000, and it sends out that same sound effect. But the thing that did bother me is that since the Rangers finally realized what was going on, and the Psycho Rangers were going after people who were turning on their Copernicus little device, shouldn't Andros have simply thought, oh, well, since they're looking for the specific sound effect, why don't I reprogram our morphers so they don't do that sound effect? I mean, Andros must have built the Astro morphers. He could have simply easily had reprogrammed the morphers. Now, fortunately enough, just like other villains, the Psycho Rangers were also stupid in the scene, because this would have been a perfect example of to actually, destroying his Digimorpher, thus eliminating the Silver Ranger permanently from the show. But of course, villains always forget this little minor detail. And now, eventually, the Rangers finally head to the old library, where all of a sudden they bump into an invisible force field. Now, of course, the Rangers know that they can't use their communicators in this scene, because this will simply alert the Psycho Rangers that they're actually in front of the old library, and they basically think of a diversion. And we find out for the first time that we know the Megatank can be actually automated. I assume Alpha 6 is controlling it from the Megaship while it's driving around. But unfortunately, the Psycho Rangers were too fast for the Megatank, easily disabled the Megatank, and found out that this was just a whole decoy, and they simply rushed back to the old library. The thing I found really funny, though, in that scene is when the Psycho Rangers finally arrive, and Psycho Blue basically says, oh, that trick didn't actually fool us. It actually did, Psycho Blue. It gave them enough time to actually morph. Now, while during the main fight in the fields with the Space Rangers and the Psycho Rangers, I was surprised that the majority of the fight was all Super Sentai footage, because a lot of fight scenes in Super Sentai have certain things that are not allowed on American TV, which are surprisingly allowed to be seen in this episode. For example, when Psycho Pink actually kicks Yellow in the face, normally you're not allowed to see kicks or punches in the face. Usually this is either cut out of the Super Sentai footage and they jump to another scene, or they simply fill it in with US footage. Since the Space Ranger didn't get a chance to actually untie Zane, Zane was basically had to figure out on his own how to get out. And we see that the Psycho Rangers have also other abilities that the Space Rangers don't have. And this takes a huge amount of damage on the spacesuits, where we actually see the spacesuits charred and all the Rangers are basically knocked out unconscious and are ready to be killed. But at the last minute, the Psycho Rangers have forcibly retreated. And thanks to Astronema's ego, screwing the one and only chance they actually were almost able to defeat the Space Rangers. Villains constantly do this all the time. They either do it because I want them to suffer, I want to gloat, or I want to do it themselves. This always happens. Villains really need to stop doing this, because this was your perfect chance to actually finally kill the Space Rangers. There was no hope. But no, the Psycho Rangers were forcibly pulled back early. Now, thanks to the previous episode, when we find out Astronema has been totally brainwashed and turned to like pure evil with no remaining humanity in her left, we basically find out that Astronema actually has a second plan, and it's not just the Psycho Rangers defeating the Rangers. We find out that Astronema somehow has linked the Psycho Rangers' energy source to Dark Spectre, meaning that every time the Psychos fight the Space Rangers, they're draining Dark Spectre's power. Now, this kind of does give an excuse of why Astronema pulled the Mac, because again, by not killing the Space Rangers, they can simply, send the Psycho Rangers out over and over again, draining Dark Spectre's powers even faster. But personally, if I was Astronema, I would have killed the Space Rangers and dealt with Dark Spectre in another way. I also like to point out, if you look at her desk, you can actually see in-space figurines. These are actually the real Bandai America in-space figurines that you buy in a store as pawns on her desk, used as, planning out, objectives and plans in order to fight the Space Rangers. Now, this whole Astronema turning against Dark Spectre is actually copied from Mega Rangers. What happened in the original Mega Ranger story, the Neji Rangers were actually linked to one of the main villains in Mega Rangers, and they are slowly draining them. That's the reason why the Neji Rangers were actually pulled back in the original footage. They pretty much follow this basic story plot element because it happens throughout the entire story arc, so they had no choice but to keep it. Now, for this episode, I have to give it a 4 out of 5. I mean, it was a really good episode, and this is really one of the very few examples that you have to copy the Super Sentai story elements in this case, because why not? It's a good story. It's Evil Ranger versus Good Ranger. It's one of the rare times that all the cast members are pretty much featured because you have to go through all the colors. The only thing that really sucks about this story arc is that Zane is hardly ever used in the episodes. He does have these shining moments in the later parts of the arc, but for the most part, Zane is just usually cannon fodder. I mean, he was just a damsel in distress. He was tied to a chair. He really couldn't do anything. Other things I gotta complain about is how come Andros didn't simply, oh, let me reprogram the astromorphers so they don't simply transmit on the same sound effect frequency as that stupid Copernicus. That would have solved a whole bunch of their problems. Zane wouldn't have gotten captured if TJ used his brain, and they would have been easily able to talk between each other. What do you guys personally think? Do you agree with me that this is a really amazing story arc for In Space? Because one, it goes across multiple episodes. It's not just a single episode of the Evil Rangers and they're simply defeated. And the Psycho Rangers actually do one unique thing against them. They actually drain their minds. They actually know their secrets of all their abilities, their fighting styles, their weapons, their Megazords. They're totally at a disadvantage. Or do you agree with that? It did have some wonky moments. For example, the Psycho Rangers didn't attack all the civilian people. That was kind of lame and stupid. I'm like, why not? And also, if you think about it, since the Psycho Rangers actually simply took all their memories, couldn't they use that in another advantage? I mean, they could have simply attacked, other planets, family members, friends. That would be a perfect way to make the Psycho Rangers even more evil by taking people hostages. The Rangers, have to give up their powers. And also another thing I got annoyed about is that they had the perfect chance to destroy Zane's morpher. I hate it when villains don't take that chance. It just always bugs me. It's like, well, why aren't you destroying Zane's morpher? He obviously still had it. Why didn't you at least take it, use it, make it a bomb or something? That's the only kind of thing that gets me really angry when they usually do these capture the hero moments. Of course, leave your comments below on what you think on this episode. And of course, leave your suggestions below on what future episodes you would like me to review. For next week's Rants, I'll be continuing the Psycho Rangers story. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you guys right back here next week.